Okay, so when drafting RF in SpatialNet, there's a couple offset rules that we need to follow, just like we had to follow for when we were drafting our structure. Now, those offset rules are, for the structure, is the 10 feet from the backup parcel. So you can see here we have this structure drafted in the 10 feet behind the parcels. So for RF, the first offset is the express cable offset, which is cable with no equipment that typically either comes from the node or that goes straight from active to active with no splitters or taps involved. And that can be 20-foot offset from structure. Now the first cable needs to be 28 feet from structure, or the first cable that has equipment on there. The second cable needs to be 18 feet from that first cable, and this is all away from the structure, not towards the parcel, but away from the parcel that you're feeding. And then the third cable is going to be 18 feet from the second cable, and so forth. So once again, 20 feet for your express cable, 28 feet for the first cable, 18 feet for the second cable, and then 18 feet for the third cable, and so on. So as we see here, we have a terminated mini bridger, and looks like there is an internal jumper inside. And the best way you can tell is either you can select the active, and you can hover over it. Okay, so here it shows the main output, and then also has the port 2, which is the secondary output, and they're equal. So that tells me there's an internal jumper. You can also check by having the active selected and going into details. And if you look under components, you'll see jumper port 2. So that tells me there's also a jumper there. Now the way that SpatialNet works with the ports is that port 1 is your input port here. Port 2 is always the port to the left. So if this was facing north, the first port would be the one to the left. The second port, or the third port, excuse me, is the port on the right. And then if there's more ports, then it goes fourth, and then fifth. Now, actually, for the first port, is the main port out here. That's your input port. So input first, second, and third. If there was a third port, or if there was like an internal DC8 inside here, this would be your port number 3 on this. But in this case, we only have 2 ports. So, alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to set a draft line for us to copy for our offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draft an express cable that's going to pass through all this and connect to another active downstream. So I'm going to do my first offset of 20. So what I do is I just come down to the command line. Now there's 2 ways to do this. Either one, you can create a P line, and I like to go right into the center of this and just kind of follow the structure so that we kind of get a nice even line here to draft off of. So I'm going to stop right there. So there's my line, and I'm going to select my line, and then I'm going to offset 20 feet into the road here. So there's my 20-foot offset. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do the 28-foot offset and then the 18 feet offset as well, because I know I'm going to have a main out, a splitter, and then another out. So then I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to offset that for 28 feet. That's going to be my main line. And then I'm going to, from my first line, as if you remember from the offset rules, I need to go 18 feet from the first cable. So I have that first cable selected. I'm going to offset 18 feet and then go up there. So now I have my 3 drafting lines. My first one here is a 20-foot offset for the express. My second one here is my 28-foot offset for the first cable that has equipment in there. And then the third cable is 18 feet from my first cable. So now with that said, I can go ahead and delete that original draft line, or the original parcel line. And so actually this drafted up this way. So what we need to do is, that offset didn't quite work that we needed to. So let's go ahead and draft another one here that goes up to here, because then this needs to be offset from there. So let's go and offset. Let's make the first cable 20 feet from there to there. There we go. We're going to offset again, make that 28 feet, and then we're going to offset again and make that 18 feet for the second one. So there we go. So let's go ahead and get rid of this so it doesn't confuse us here. I'm just trimming it away here so that we can delete it. Okay, so now I'm just going to stretch this out. So now we have some really good offset lines, and this is just a little bit off, but let's go and make that adjustment so it doesn't curve down like it looks like it does. So as you can see, it can get a little messy, and sometimes the offset doesn't quite work the way you want it to, but I believe we have it done here. So we have this here, kicks off to this first line here, and then it's going to go, or sorry, this line here, and it's going to go up, and then we have this one, and that one's going to go up, and then we have this one, and that one's going to go up. So, alright, so with our draft line set, let's go ahead and draft our express cable. So on this port, I'm going to select the terminator and delete it because we need an open port to attach to. So hit OK. This just basically says that now that you've deleted a port, we have an open port without a termination or cable connected to it. So we're going to remedy that by selecting this, selecting the port, which will make it turn orange, so that means that port is highlighted, and then we're going to add. And if you notice here, Spatial Net has it kind of color coded. Green is your fiber, and blue is your RF. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit add cable, and then our cable creation pop-up comes up. Cable type, we are aerial strand. So I'm going to have my P3 625 overhead for this spec. Different spec files will have different cable types, or different cable names. So beware there, but mostly you're going to have your P3 625, P3 875, etc. The RF system type needs to be selected as tapped coaxial cable, because this cable, actually, excuse me, since this is our express run, we're actually going to have tapped coaxial cable less than or equal to 715, because we're going to use 625 as our express cable. The constructor type is aerial. Now that isn't as important because that will change as you draft per your structure. So if you're attaching to an underground structure, it'll change the constructor type to underground automatically. Okay. Alright, and that's, I believe, all we have to do for that. So once we hit add, you're going to go ahead and see, which I'm going to ortho off. So now you can see here's our drafting line. Don't need to worry about putting any kind of strand length or anything like that, because what we're going to do is we're going to capture the length as we draft. So what you do is you take your cable and you're going to right click either on the footage or on the strand that you want to draft to. So I'm going to highlight I'm going to hover over the 125 and right click. Now what that did, I just added 125 feet to the loss of the cable. So, and then since it's an express cable going all the way up to the top, I'm going to be passing all of this structure as I go up. So I'm just going to go through and highlight all the way through. Now, here, we're going from aerial to underground, so what we need to do is capture not only the strand length, but also the riser length. And basically all you do is you hover over the 25 and right click, and that adds it to the loss. Now we select the 100, we go in and we select the 25, we select the 200, and the 215. So now all of the footage that we need to add has been added. So now what we need to do is we need to draft out a little bit and then start drafting on our 20-foot offset. So I'm going to turn my ortho on, click here, and then now I can start drafting. And you can do as many segments as you need, but I'm just going to kind of click here and then continue on. So you can turn your snaps on so you can line right up with the cable. And so there we go. So now your last click, you don't want to right click, but you want to left click so you can place a piece of equipment. I'm just going to place a terminator. So I'm going to right click here, and then this menu pops up. I'm going to select my passives, and I'm going to do an unknown line terminator, which is your W terminator. The unknown self terminator is your T terminator. So I'm going to select that, and now it's just going to draft the cable right on top of my draft line. So here, this also says, hey, do you need to add an annotation? And in this case, it's the tombstone or the end alignment bubble, and yes, I do. So now I'm going to select right here, right in the middle, and it should place with my loss and everything calculated. And so if you look back, there we go. Now we have our express cable and our line level. So now I'm going to clear selection, and I'm going to select our offset line here, and then our offset line here, and delete that, and now that's out of the way. Okay. So now next thing we're going to do is I'm going to select this terminator and delete it. Confirm. It's okay. And what we're going to do is I'm going to replace the internal jumper with an internal splitter. And how you do that is, once you have the active selected, you go into your details, you select your component here, edit, and replace. Now if there isn't a component in there and it's just blank, then you would just go to add component, or edit, and then you bring this up and it'll add there. So we have this selected, we're going to edit, and we're going to replace. Okay, there is the existing one. I'm going to pull this down, and I'm going to do and this looks like it's a Mini Bridger dual two-way. I'm going to select that, I'm going to hit apply. It's going to say there's duplicate. Obviously you don't name these, so they're all going to be named the same. Hit yes. And here we go. So this comes up with that edit levels window here, and this tells you, okay, your input is 18, your main out is 40, and then your two ports are 36 and 36, which confirms that we have an internal two-way splitter. And that's on the 54 level. Here's your 870 level, and then your 750 levels. However you set up in your dictionary, those will be there. But here's your high digital is right there. So hit close, close, and close. And now if you notice, we select the Mini Bridger. Now there's two ports here, or three ports I should say. One's the main out. And this is going to be your port 2, and you can see as I hovered over it, it says port 2, and then this is your port 3 right there. So my port 2, what I'm going to do is here, and this is kind of up to the drafter now, how you're going to start. I don't know if you can use port 3 to draft to this outer cable, or you can use this port to this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this port to draft to here, and then I'm going to use this port to draft to here. That way I don't have any cables crossing over. So I have my port 2 selected, and it's selected because it's orange. Now I'm going to add cable. I'm going to use 625 overhead. It is not untapped coaxial cable now. Now it is tapped coaxial cable. And this doesn't matter what size. So tapped coaxial cable, and the construction type is going to be aerial. And like I said, this doesn't really matter because once you select your footage, it'll change automatically. Actually, if you notice, this highlight is still highlighted from the last drafting, and you can remove your highlight by going up to your Spatial Net tab and clicking this little unhighlight or highlight with the red line through it, and that should get rid of the highlight for you, so it's not too confusing. Okay, now I'm hit add, and once again I'm going to undo my ortho or my OSNAP here. I'm going to right click either on the strand, or you can click on the footage itself. And I'm going to stop at this cable and place a 2-port tab. So this piece of cable only has these two links associated to it, because I'm going to be adding a tab right here. So okay, so this one's actually quite easy. So our draft line is going to be that line here. So you have a little offset rule here. You're just going to click there, and then I'm going to draft down this way. And then as you can see, I'm going to follow this as close as possible. Now the insertion point for a tap is on the far left side. So if you kind of measure out the length of the tap, if you put it right here, the tap should fall right on top of that pole. So I'm going to go right here, and then I'm going to right click, and then taps. Now depending on your spec, you should know which tap to place, but I'm going to do an FFT2 port. And now if you are designing from new, then you would not go this route. If you are, say, redrafting a design already done, perhaps in CADX or low data, then you would use this method. But since we're designing new, there's this option called auto suggest taps, and this gives you the best tap available that will fall within the specs. So if I click on that, that's going to place the tap, and it looks like it falls pretty much right in the center with the pole. So that's good. So now what I'm going to do is Continue on. Now, normally in most specs, once you change from aero to underground, and if you have two different cable types for aero and underground, then this is where you would change it here. But this does not have a 625 underground. It has a PS, which is power supply. But other than that, it does not have it. So I'm going to leave it the 625 overhead cable type. The construction type will change automatically. So here, I'm going to right click on the riser, right click on the 100 feet, and I'm going to place another tap here. Okay, so now I'm just going to draft, kind of find where the tap will land right in the middle. I'm going to right click, auto suggest. It tells me either your 4-port 17 or 2-port 17. So I'm going to do 4-port 17 here, and there we go. Now, so now I'm done. Now there's two ways to go about this. You can hit done now, have it draft up, and then you can add your terminator later. Or if you want to do it now, you can just right click, turn this cluster mode on, and what that means is you don't have to worry about the direction of your mouse to where it will place the piece of equipment. It will just add on to the last equipment on the same angle that's already been placed. So I'm going to turn my cluster mode on, so then it doesn't matter what direction this is facing, it'll automatically place it the same angle as this. Then I just right click, passive, and I'm going to do a line terminator. And it knows that once you select line terminator, that you're done drafting. So even though I had this cable kind of offset weird, it still drafted at the same angle as your tab. Okay, so now it's asking for your annotation for your bubble. Now this is a little, I don't call it a bug, but if you place an annotation based off of a terminator, what's it going to give you is your through levels, not the tap levels that we're supposed to be placing. So I'm going to hit done. I'm not going to place that, but what I do need to do is I need to select the tap, and then I need to add the annotation or the inline bubble from there. So I have the tap selected. I'm going to select here, and I'm going to click on annotate. And now this is the level we want. So I'm going to click it up here, and there you go. So that's the tap levels. Now let me show you if we have this selected, and if we add annotate, same thing, click over here, and you notice that it's the throughput levels, not the tap levels. So I'm going to clear selection. I'm going to select this. I'm going to delete this. So now as you can see here, the offsets sometimes overlap each other, and for whatever reason it did that. So let's go ahead and we can make a small adjustment to this cable so that it does not overlap these tabs. So it's going to select here. There we go. So there's just sometimes you have to do some minor adjustments. Here I'm going to hover over that. I'm going to delete that vertex. There we go. So there you go. So you can move that just so the tabs don't overlap each other. Okay, so there is that line. We're going to go and stop there for that one, and now we're going to draft our last cable. So there's our last offset, which is going to be 18 feet off of this guy. So now we can go ahead and delete this offset and then delete that offset. So now we only have this one last offset. Alright, I'm going to select my active, select the port. I'm going to add cable. 65 overhead, tapped coax cable. This will change automatically, so hit add. So I guess the highlight does clear when you do that, so I guess you don't need to worry about clearing the highlight. Good to know. Alright, so we're going to highlight this guy, highlight that one. We're going to highlight the riser, highlight the 100 foot, 25, and 200. And we're going to place the tap here, and then we're going to place the tap there. But for this piece of cable, we need to stop right there. Okay, so this is kind of where it's up to the drafter on how you want to draft this. I like to draft hard angles like this, come back up. Now normally there would be an input cable here, and then you would jump that, but for now we're just going to draft this, and then we kind of come back down. I know this is a bit strange, but this is just how they have it. And so here we go. So now we're on that offset, and you have the freedom to draft how you need to get to that offset. And so in this case, this is how I drafted it. Okay, I'm going to turn off that, and then I'm going to start drafting. Okay. Alright, click there. And now I'm at my first ped here. I'm going to have a I'm going to kind of go right about here. I'm going to right click, I'm going to auto suggest, and it didn't quite give me one. So what that means is it doesn't know what to tell you to give you the exact inspect tab, so you kind of have to now guess. So I'm just going to do all tabs. I'm going to do a 2-port, and I'm just going to put a 14 for now, and we'll go ahead and we can change it later if we need to. And so it's going to give you that warning here. Levels are too low, 4 level above minimum allowed. So basically they're saying it's a little too hot. So, but we'll just continue on. So now we place our tap. We're going to right click on this footage to gain those numbers, and then go up here, and then we're going to place another. Make sure there's no ostriches available. There's not. We'll go to all tabs, 2-port. I'm just going to put a 2-port 4 for now, and we're just going to place that. And it knows that the 4 is the inline tap, so it's going to stop. And now in this case, we do have that tap selected, and we can place this inline bubble because that tap is selected, and we'll have to add the terminator later. So we'll go ahead and select the tap, select the port, add passive, because it's considered a passive, pull down the equipment type, and it's going to be a unknown self terminator, which is the T terminator, and the construction status is going to be designed. That's what we're doing now. If this was an as-built, we would change it to constructed. Now the RF system type, before we've been using tapped coaxial cable, but this is actually a RF network device. This will be true for all splitters, taps, actives, terminators, Wi-Fi devices, pretty much anything RF that's not power or a cable will be an RF network device. Okay, we'll hit add. Saying duplicate passive device found, which is true because there's probably a lot of unnamed devices. Hit OK. And now it's saying, do you want to annotate this? No, we do not, because we already got one there. So now, depending on what levels, or hold on, let's go and delete our offset lines here so they're out of the way. Okay, there we go. So if you notice on here, so now we have our drafted cable. So let's figure out what taps actually need to be placed here. But what we can do is we can select it. We can click on our levels and find out if it's within spec. And this is where you kind of have to know what your spec levels are. So here we have 19.7, or say 19.8 over our 19.45. So there isn't a tilt, like an RF tilt. So we're good there. So this is actually in spec, but for whatever reason, SpatialNet said that it was out of spec or too close to spec. So we actually can leave that as a 14. Now up here, if you notice, it's a little bit hot and it has a tilt. So we have our 24 over 27. So there's about a 3.6 dB tilt, which means we're going to have at least a 4 dB equalizer or higher to fix that tilt. If we leave it a 4-port, but since it's so hot, I'm actually going to replace this. And you just select the tap, and we're going to replace. Either you can go replace increase or replace decrease also. But I'm just going to hit replace for now, and I'm going to pull down, let's say a 7. Hit apply. Hit close. Now this will not read level for you. So, but you're going to have to select this tap and do a level tool. So what this leveling tool is, it basically does a recalculation downstream. And on this, we're going to uncheck auto update faceplate values because we don't want SpatialNet to auto update in this case. We do want to keep this checked even though we don't have an active. We just always keep that checked, and I always keep terminate at next active check so it doesn't run through the whole system. It will stop at the next active. Okay, and I'm hit relevel, and basically what it's going to say is, hey, there's a couple out of design spec ones, just go ahead and update. And so now we have a 20 over 24, which is a little bit closer to what we want. and there is still that 3.6 dB tilt. So with 3.6 dB tilt, go and hit clear to clear this highlight. We're going to select that, and we're going to basically add RF component. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an equalizer, and oh, looks like there is nothing configured for this spec, so I guess we're just going to leave it as is. But normally what you would do is you would find out what you would insert that equalizer, and that then you would recalculate, and you would find out, you know, you'd get the level you need. But in this case we don't have it, so we're just going to leave it. Okay, so now we have an RF cable all drafted in there. What we need to do next now is, don't worry about the drops or anything else, not quite yet. Now what we need to do is we got to make sure all of our equipment is associated to the structure. So now that everything's done, what we need to do is turn on, if you have your Spatial Net tab selected, turn on your multi-select, and you can tell that by these arrows. The two arrows highlighted means you can select multiple items. The single big arrow means you can only select one item. So we're going to have that turned on. We're going to select our active, and we're going to select the structure that it should be associated to. So here, then we're going to, this little puzzle piece comes up, and we're going to attach selected. So attach entities in the process, that means we attach this guy to the joint pull, so we're good to go there. Now we're going to clear that selection, and we're going to select this tap and this pull and attach selected, and voila, that was attached. Now we're going to clear. Terminators also need to be attached to the equipment, so we're going to select the tap, the terminator, and then the pull, or the ped, excuse me. Attach. This is saying it's already attached, but go ahead and say reattach. Reattach. Looks like this was already attached, so we're good there, but anyway, it's always good to double check. Clear selection. Select this tap, select this ped, attach, reattach, close, clear. And actually you can do a window if you need to, so we can select that, and this terminator is also in there, so we're going to select that terminator. Attach, reattach, cool, close, and clear selection. Okay. Now, the next thing that we need to make sure is to make sure that we have the RF equipment designator selected for each of the RF network devices. And what Spatial Net does is that since we started out with a cable and added cables as we were added taps as we were drafting, it made these pieces of equipment tapped coaxial cable. So we need to change that to the RF network device, and I'll show you what I mean. So if I select here and I go to edit and construction status and design, that's fine. But if you go to the RF tab up here, RF system type is tapped coaxial cable, and that's because that was selected when we were drafting the cable. So you can either go into here individually and select it and change it to an RF network device, or I'm going to show you what I do, which is I select all the RF network devices. Like I said, that is not a cable or power related. So that's all terminators, taps, splitters. Don't need to worry about the inline bubbles. Select that, select that, select that. So now I have all the RF equipment selected. And up here you'll see this button has now changed to multi-edit. So if I click that, your multi-edit will come up here. If you look on this over here, here is all. You have your RF tap devices, your RF active devices, and your RF passive devices. They're all RF network devices. So if you just select all, come over to here where it says RF system type, double click it, select RF network device, and hit apply. And what that did is I went through there and added all of those in there. So now if you selected that, edit, RF system type, RF network device. And now we clear selection. And voila. Now the last thing that we need to do and confirm is to make sure that these cables are associated to the structure, to make sure the cables are associated to the structure. Now, what you can do is if you hover over a cable, it should tell you the length of the cable. So here, length equals 265 feet, which is, if you add up 125 and 130, that's 255 feet. So there's there's an extra 10 foot in there. I'm not sure where. 55. So that is strange. Let's see, let's hover over the 100. This should be 125 feet from the riser to the 100. So we know that's associated to that. So this right here, so this is 265. Let's uncount that one. 1, 2, 5, and 5. So there's an extra 10 foot there. So let's go ahead and select this cable. And just like our equipment, we can select the strands that it should be associated with. Hit attach selected. And it says these were already attached. So we're good to go there. So we have 125 and 130. So we can go ahead and clear selection. We can select this cable. Edit. And that footage should be 255. Hit apply. Okay. So now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to run a couple reports. Actually, no, I'll save that for another lesson. So there you go. Now you have it. There is your RF cable created. And one last thing actually we should do is do a read level. So we're going to select our active. We're going to go clear selection and go down to leveling tool, RF read level. We're going to highlight trace, have that unchecked, have that checked, and read level. And nothing should really change because we didn't really change, but basically what it does is it goes through to make sure all your inline bubbles are updated, and that's it. Clear selection, and there you have it.